This week on the Men at the Movies podcast, we launch our new logo and look at Independence Day. This movie is a guide to dealing with crisis. The principles of a crisis is that it happens to everyone, and it's always a surprise. The purpose of the crisis is to reveal what and who matters most, as well as revealing who we really are. The most important thing is not if a crisis will happen, we know it will, but how will we respond when it does? Happy Independence Day, and let's discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being.
Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me via the studio is Britt Mooney. Hey, Britt, how you doing today?
I am doing well, man. How are you?
Good. Have a happy 4th of July weekend.
I know
You got any plans for the 4th?
We will probably be in North Carolina in Bryson City if my son doesn't have a major allergy attack. So he went to the allergist a couple of weeks ago, and the last few times that we've been to the cabin in North Carolina, he has these major allergy attacks, and so we have to leave early or something because he's just miserable. And she's like, "Yep, he's basically allergic to life and dust." And but she suggested a couple of medications that might help, and some different antihistamines. So we're going to try that, and hopefully we're going to be able to be there for a couple days. But that's where we're going to be, out in the woods in a cabin with no internet and no cable TV, and me reading books is basically what happens.
Good for you, bad for the kids. Dad, we're so bored.
Yeah, I tell them, you got to bring a book. Come on.
Yeah, no. Do something. So we're very excited because July 1st marks our launch of our rebrand. We've got a brand new logo, same title, same awesome content, but we've got a pretty logo done by Ian Johnson. I'm going to put his details in our show notes and on the website.
His deets.
Yeah, that's what they say in the biz.
Is that even
right?
cool anymore? Anymore? I think that's old.
We've aged out of coolness, dude.
Oh, I gave up on cool a long time ago.
But he's helped with, he did the logos, and we spent a long time working on these and really like where we landed. Mm-hmm. He also helped to create the templates for our episode and our website artwork. Nice. So it's going to be awesome. We're super excited. We've got the new Riverside studio that we're getting used to, where we'll be able to do not just, my stuff sounds good, but now Britt sounds good.
Booyah.
It's booyah in 3D. Because not only does he get it records locally and sends it up so it doesn't have to filter through the internet. But the really cool thing is it pulls our video in semi high def. I'm not sure you would really want to see us in high def. So we're going to be putting clips, short videos of our conversations on YouTube. So we've got a YouTube channel, Men at the Movies, and that's where we post some of our live streams. We've done a couple live streams on Facebook. We're probably going to do some more of those in the future. And we're just super excited about this new stuff, because I think from a quality standpoint, as far as video and audio and all that, we're pretty much as good as it's going to get. And I feel like we've been doing the content pretty well for a while now. So we'll keep sharpening that up. But man, I'm excited about this new sort of launch of of how we look and the appearance. And if you love this podcast, if you enjoy this podcast, man, share it. Send your favorite episode to one of your buddies. Give us a rating. If you really, really, really love us, you can visit Patreon, patreon.com/Men at the Movies. And you can partner with us for as low as I think $3 a month. It's a cup of coffee. And then you ramp up. You can be part of our pre-show recordings. You can get notified when we're going to have Facebook stuff. You can contact us. You get some like advanced merchandise and some cool stuff. So we're just sort of this is our first pass. So things are only going to get better from here. Like our video for last week for parenthood, that's the first pass. Like that's the worst it's going to get. It's only going to get better. And the same thing about this podcast is right now, this is the worst it's going to be, is Paul rambling about how awesome his own podcast is. But we're excited. We've been around for about a year and a half now. We just crossed the 7,000 downloads threshold.
Yeah.
That's 7,000 people.
7,000.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine, they came over for dinner last week, and his wife was like, I binged 40 episodes over the last 2 weeks. So I feel like you and I have spent like 40 hours together. It's like, I know so much about you. And so thank you to Mandy for listening to us and for supporting us and giving us feedback. But then you didn't come to hear about all that. You came to hear about Independence Day because it is 4th of July weekend. We've got we even have a special branding logo out this weekend with the red, white, and blue suit on.
Nice.
It's going to be awesome. And so what we thought for our launch of our rebrand, our launch of our summer blockbuster series, which really Britt and I really loved last year. We did Top Gun. We did Raiders of the Lost Ark. We did Shrek. We did Saving Private Ryan. Like movies that were just awesome, fun to talk about. And so we said, what can we do this year? So what better movie to kick it off with than Independence Day?
So good.
So Britt, I'll let you talk now.
Okay.
When we looked at all the movies we could have picked for the blockbuster, other than, hey, it's 4th of July weekend and it's Independence Day, so it just seems like a natural fit. Why this movie? Why do you love this movie?
I love this movie because it's just fun. It's a great kind of mashup between it's like a disaster movie meets an alien invasion movie meets
with a little bit of Top Gun thrown in, right?
Because you got the dog fights thrown in and Top Gun. So it's got some unique elements and it's
I have that written down right here. It's a mashup of all those different genres.
And they are self-aware that they are doing it. Like it's like they make jokes along the way and little comments on little lines. Like they even the guy at the end, Russell says at the end, like, I picked the wrong day to stop drinking. That's totally
Throw
from
back
Airplane. Which was so they were able to have fun with it. They didn't take themselves too seriously. It's not like 2012, which was an awful movie. They just took themselves way too seriously. And so it's just fun. And the cast is amazing.
Oh yeah.
And the pacing is good. And it's just a really well done movie all around. It's a little cheesy, but like I said, they made it fun enough that you don't mind it because it's kind of tongue in cheek half of the time. And I think we picked this movie because we were looking through, again, summer blockbusters, and we tried to pick a theme of science fiction and aliens sort of thing. And because there's so many big science fiction movies that come out in the summer. And so this was one we picked. And obviously, like you said, it fits right in with July 4th.
So there's a lot of different directions we could go. You could talk about identity, personality, battle. What we landed on, not to use pun intended, was this idea of the purpose of crisis. And I think in a lot of these movies, I think when we talked about Arrival, I think we looked at it the same way. But when we looked at Aliens, and I think maybe even our attraction to alien movies, there's a lot in here about the idea of life outside of our planet, outside of our solar system. But this idea that we're not alone in the universe. Again, we talk about movies expressing some sort of DNA that's written. We know we're not alone in the universe. And so in a very real way, aliens are supernatural. And so in this, we're going to see this crisis and how do we respond to it? And one of the scenes that I loved is when the spaceships first appeared and everything stops, like cars running into each other, basketball games stopping. It is arresting. And what they say is this changes everything.
Right.
And that's, honestly, one reason we do this podcast is because when the supernatural comes to earth, when the supernatural sort of happens, it changes everything.
Well, that's just the revelation, right? There's a revelation the revelation of another world, and it happens in a lot of movies. This isn't the only one, but it's Narnia. It's like, usually a revelation of another world is also a revelation of a different conflict that you didn't know about. And you are thrust into it, right? That's why it's a movie. Like, it's not like, oh, that's nice that there's this conflict over there, or I can just stay over here, right? It's a movie because now you have to deal with it. And so, it's one of those. Well,
and it's interesting because you talk about that, and it's very easy to look at the Russia and Ukraine conflict as being basic. There's a worldwide impact, but the conflict itself is between Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
Whereas something like this, everyone gets involved with the conflict.
Right.
And so if there's a verse for this podcast, you brought this up, Britt. It's 1 Corinthians 11:19. For there must be factions among you in order that those who are genuine among you may be recognized. And so that idea, we're talking about the purpose of crisis. What is crisis for? And so that's what we wanted to really deep dive into, not just, we'll look at crisis reveals what's most important and who's most important. Crisis reveals our identity. Who they are is revealed. And then the last thing is, the question is, well, if there's a crisis, if there's conflict, if there's this divisions and factions, how do we respond to that? And so we're going to talk about all those things, those sort of three main points as we go through.
Yeah. And crisis happens to everybody. In big picture, we all have an enemy that's out to kill us. Like, that's part of the revelation, right? Part of the revelation is, we're in trouble, right? We have sinned. We've fallen short of the glory of God. We're headed towards wrath. All of that stuff that's scriptural and truth. And now we have to deal with that. Well, what does that mean for us? So what are we going to do in the midst of that? In the movie, we're not going to go too much into it, but it's kind of like Halloween, and there's like there's no compromise with this thing. There's no negotiation with this enemy. Right. Like, this enemy is just, and it's bigger than us, and it's going to overwhelm us, and there's nothing we can do seemingly about it. But
wait,
also,
Britt, are you saying that everyone feels at some point like they're overwhelmed and helpless and don't know how to get out of the situation they're in?
Well, that's true about just the spiritual element.
I thought that was just me.
No, that's true about the spiritual element, but then our enemy then does things to us individually also. Like, out of that reality, which is big and universal, there's also the individual realities of it. It's expressed in problems in your marriage, and it's expressed in problems with your kids and jobs and economics and wars in Ukraine or whatever. Like, it's expressed in more individual crises, but we are all going through crises, right? That's right. The reality. And so, while as far as the individual problems and emergencies may be a little different, that we are all united in that. Like, we can all say, like in the movie, like, we are all united in that. And so therefore, now we have to see, like, now that we know that, what's our response? Now that we know what's real, what are we going to do?
And we've talked about this before, that frequently these stories use these big events, these worldwide global things, or, it could be even be a more local thing, but it doesn't really matter if there's no personal stakes to it. Like, for instance, I did a little math. In the movie, we saw New York City, LA, and DC get destroyed. approximately 13 million people wiped out. But we care about the dog in the tunnel. And it's that idea of personal stakes that helps to reveal that. So this first clip I'm going to play is with Steve, Captain Steve. He's the pilot, played by Will Smith, and his girlfriend, Jasmine, played by Vivica Fox. And it's really funny how they sort of woke up, thought it was an earthquake, didn't really understand what was going on. And then, he's an Air Force pilot. So he, of course, gets called back up. He was supposed to be off for the 4th of July weekend. But if you're in the military, something can happen and all passes are revoked. As we talk about, Crisis reveals who matters, who is most important, and what is most important. We see that shift in their reaction as Steve gets ready to go back to the base. Jasmine's reacting out of fear. She's like, when she throws open the curtains, it's like this giant 15-mile wide spaceship is why I don't want you to leave. But he has a duty. And then there's sort of the first goodbye and then the second goodbye, which is like, wait, like this idea, like if this is the last time we say goodbye, this is not how I want to do it.
But this is just the beginning.
Come on now. You can't go. You got to call them back.
I'm not going to do this with you, Jasmine. I've got to report to El Toro.
But you said you was on leave for the 4th.
Yeah, well, they canceled it. Look, why are you acting like this?
Why? That's why.
Look, I really don't think they flew 90 billion light years to come down here and start a fight and get all rowdy. Look, why don't you just relax? I'm gonna report to El Toro, find out what's going on. Hey, what you doing in there, man?
Nothing. I'm just driving.
Look, hey, I got these for you.
Firecrackers.
Hey, you be careful.
Wait, I want to tell you something.
What is it, Jasmine?
You take care of yourself, you hear?
Look, why don't you get some things packed and you and Dylan come stay with me on the base? You will see that there is nothing to be scared of.
Really? You don't mind?
Well, I mean, we'll have to let all my other girlfriends know that they can't come over, and got to postpone a little freaky
There you go.
weekend.
There he goes, thinking you all that. But you are not as charming as you think you are, sir.
Yes, I am.
Them big old Dumbo ears.
Shoot them chicken legs.
As we talk about in Crisis, we realize who's most important and what's most important. Like this idea that, like, how would you act if the end of the world was here? Like what, if you had one day left, what would you want to do? Who would you want to talk to? Who would you want to spend the time with?
Yeah, so this movie does a good job, and a lot of movies do this, right? This is basic storytelling. You show normal life being interrupted, right? So, but this is the principle of a crisis. A crisis is a crisis because you don't expect it, right? I mean, it's a crisis because you weren't like, well, there's going to be a crisis today that's going to change my life. Like and we can all relate to it. That's why they put it in every movie, because we can all relate to, I thought my day was going to go like this, but I'm out getting the paper and I look up and there's a big spaceship that's, over the whole city of LA. And you also can't help your first reaction. Her first reaction was fear. His first reaction was also fear expressed as anger.
And duty.
And duty.
Like he defaulted to duty.
He defaulted to duty. But because they both thought, what could happen? What kind of person do I want to look back and say that I was? I don't want to be the kind of person that the last thing I said to the person I love was anger or fear. That's not who I want to be. So my point is, you can't help your first initial emotional reaction. That's not a sin, by the way. You can't help that you just emotionally react. But what you have to do is take a step back and think forward. What kind of person do I want to look back and say that I was in this moment? What kind of person do I want to say that I was? And that makes you think about what's most important and who's most important. What's most important is that I tell this person I love them, take care of yourself. What's most important is that even though she's a stripper and maybe I'll never get to NASA or I'll never get the promotion because, I don't know if that's true about the military. Maybe it was, but how they express it in the movie is that him dating a stripper meant that he probably wouldn't get some promotions or he would be looked down at or whatever. But in the moment of a crisis, he's like, I want you on base with me. Because he was spending the night at her house. But he brings her into he wants to protect her. And that was good.
I thought that was an interesting shift, how he's like, you just basically hunker down, you relax. It's not a big deal. To then out at the car, he's like, y'all come, like you mentioned, you sort of wrapping her in the protective embrace of saying, wait, what if this goes seriously south? Yeah. Like you said, is that the last thing that I want to have said?
Right. It's not a big deal. No, I think it's a pretty big deal. Like
it might
aliens, aliens showing up has never happened. It's a big deal. It's a good scene. And by the way, I don't remember if this is Will Smith's. I don't think it was his first movie, but it was one of the movies that really made him a star.
Right.
Like he was coming out of Fresh Prince and starting to make movies, and this was one that really made him a star. With the comedy and the action and all the things that he does. And he's a good actor too. But this is a good scene because he realizes, you know what? Who cares what the Air Force thinks? I love this person and I have the ability to protect her and her son. And I love him too. And the dog, right? Or whatever. So I'm gonna bring them within my realm of protection, no matter what the other consequences might be. And so we can't help our reaction, but we have to think about what kind of people do we want to say we were when the chips were down.
Yeah, he had just made Bad Boys, but other than that, it was Fresh Prince. But then he would go on to do Men in Black.
Men in Black was another one.
Enemy of the State. We're going to skip over Wild Wild West and talk about Bagger Vance and Ali. So, but this was sort of the big turn because even Bad Boys wasn't sort of as big as Bad Boys 2.
No,
we would argue, but yeah. So this was sort of the launch pad. Again, we're going to use our Independence Day puns today. So this is the launching point for his career. But you see that in all the characters as they experience that, Jeff Goldblum's character, David, reaches out to his ex-wife, his buddy, Harvey. I don't know the character's name. It's Harvey Firestein. And, he's like, I got to call my mother. And all these other people's like, forget my lawyer. But he thinks about, again, even he's doing that. Who matters? When the, proverbial, when the shit hits the fan, who are you going to call? Who are you going to reach out to? Because you've got to have somebody. When you get that diagnosis or that news or that report or that job loss, or again, when the crisis comes, the stakes don't have to be global. It's much more important. In our lives, the stakes are always personal. Mm-hmm. And we've got to have those people. And part of the reason is to identify those people who are in fact most important and who will show up for us 2:00 in the morning when your kid's in the hospital or when your wife's in the hospital or when you're in the hospital. It's all about the hospital for me since I grew up in healthcare. But
well, Peter talks about it. I think it's in First Peter where he talks about how, like, when Jesus comes back, there's an end coming, and like everything will be burnt up, everything. And he says, since this is true, what sort of people ought you to be? In other words, how are you going to live knowing this is true? I've told this story many times, but my mentor and I were at this house, and Larry Trammell, my mentor, he was a musician. I'm semi-musician. And we were at this huge house, overlooked a golf course. We went into the basement, and this is years ago, but it was a multi-million-dollar studio in the basement, and guitars and amps and all this sort of stuff. And then just this humongous house. And you looked out over the golf course, and it's beautiful. And he and I stepped out on the deck, and he looked at me and he goes, all of this is going to burn. He said, don't set your heart on this because it's all going to burn. In other words, like, yes, it's nice, but it's still only temporary. Like, what matters? And when it all starts to go wrong, what matters are people, not stuff. When I got in a wreck, my dad, I'm sure, was not happy that the car was totaled, but his first question was, are you okay? That was his first question, because that's what you care about, right? We can deal with a new car. We can deal with that. But people are what's important. And you see this through, I love that about David. He calls his ex, even though she had kind of rejected him, maybe put him down, on all of that. And Steve does it. President Whitmore calls his wife. He's got the whole country to deal with. And he calls his wife. What are you doing? You got to get out of there, right? Yeah. And Russell does the same thing. One of my favorite characters is Russell, played by Quaid, Randy Quaid, Uncle Eddie. And he, but, playing this dude, and his kids are like, whatever, like they got to deal with this guy, and he's not a great dad, and he's not around, and he's kind of a screw up. And yet when everything starts going south and aliens show up, like, he goes and he finds them, and they're already headed out, and he's stepping up. Now he's let's get out of here. Let's work together. So even he kind of realizes what's important to him. Not that it wasn't, people know that. If you ask them, they'd say it, but it really, who you are in a crisis is who you are. That's who you are. That's who you really are. And that's why God allows it. Why God allowed it with Job. That's why God allows it with David. That's why God allows it with different people throughout the scripture and in our lives. That's why he allows it, is to help to teach us what's important.
So that verse, it was 2 Peter 3:10. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, and then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed. And since all these things are thus to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be in lives of holiness and godliness, waiting for and hastening the coming of the day of the Lord? Because of which the heavens will be set on fire and dissolved, and the heavenly bodies will melt as they burn. But according to his promise, we are waiting for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. That idea that crisis sort of burns away the crap, right? It burns away what doesn't matter. There's different, I couldn't find it right now, but it talks about how trials and tests sort of purify us like gold in the fire. Mm-hmm. Because it's under the heat. And we talked about this a little bit with Cinderella Man, how crisis reveals our character. And so, and I think in a lot of ways, what you see as this movie does a lot of telling as well as showing, but in the show don't tell. I mean, there's got to be a lot of expository dialogue to explain what's going on. Right. But this idea that when you reveal what matters most, like when Steve tells Jasmine, come to the base, I'm not ashamed of you. People will know when, David drives from New York to DC in some sort of supersonic land speed record to actually make it through the traffic to get to DC in time for the countdown.
Yeah. Harvey didn't even get to his mom.
He's stuck in traffic, but they can make it to
David
DC.
Makes it out in the Buick or whatever it was.
And a bike. Although a bike in those scenes probably would have been faster. But you see what matters most. You see, and even when they attack, they're like, all these people are out there. We probably should bring them in.
Right.
Because
yeah, good.
They are what matter. And so taking that to the next step, what matters and who matters most is a kind of an indicator to reveal who you are. And so through this movie, we see, especially in David, you see him early in the movie. He bikes. So he's, he doesn't drive a gas guzzling car because he's about saving the earth. He recycles. He criticizes his dad about the styrofoam. And do you know how long that will last? He smokes a cigar. Those things will kill you. And he gets to work. He's like, we have recycling. What are we doing here? He cares very much about the earth. And I thought it was super cool towards the end when he actually says something as he's about to go on the plane and on the spaceship to go put a virus in the spaceship. And he's like, all my life I've been sort of working to try to save the planet. Now here's my chance. And it reveals who he was. Like you mentioned with Steve, he was a pilot who wanted to go to space. He wanted to be a part of NASA. Well, he gets that opportunity to go fly a spaceship. And even the president, because the president was a warrior. He was, I think, a Gulf War veteran was his theme. And so he was like, that was him. He was a young, brash warrior who was a president who had lost that. And then by the end of the movie, he's back in the fighter plane. He's back in the jet, doing what he sort of knows best and becoming who he is.
Yeah, like the worst thing that can happen to a warrior is to make them a politician. That's like the worst thing that can happen. Because they know what's important and they know that people are fighting about stuff that doesn't matter. Wait a minute, there's stuff that actually does matter and you guys are just fighting for your own position or your agendas or whatever. But in a battle, it's about the guy next to you. It's, like it's in a battle, like you understand really quickly it's life and death and there's things that matter. And so he gets that chance. And see, here's the other thing about Crisis. So Crisis reveals our character, who we really are. It also gives us an opportunity. This is another thing people don't understand about Crisis is we think, well, this crisis is going to ruin me. But for God, he's saying, no, this crisis is an opportunity for you to receive reward in heaven. This is an opportunity for you to save others. This is an opportunity for you. Yes, it's to find your purpose, right? Jasmine is no longer a stripper. She's not a stripper anymore. Now she's driving a big truck and she's saving people and she's saving the first lady and she's doing all this stuff. Like Jasmine has found a new purpose in life and she's a leader. And the same thing happens with David. And he's had all this knowledge and he was, I don't want to say wasting, but he was just kind of doing like computer repair, or he was
you're just a cable guy.
You're just a cable guy and all that stuff. Russell had been a warrior, but now he was just, doing crop dusting and drinking, and he had other further trauma from, being up there with the aliens, being abducted by aliens, and no one believed them. But now, like, all of this is opportunities. Instead of seeing like all that they lost, because they did lose a lot. They realized what's important and then what their purpose is, and they took a step back and they said, okay, how are we going to respond, and what are the opportunities here? And the dad always realized the opportunity. The dad, David's dad, I forget his name, but David's
Judd
dad,
Hirsch's character,
Judd Hirsch, who was an amazing character actor.
Oh yeah,
but that dude, he's the moral core of the movie. He's the moral core. He always knows what's right. So they're on Air Force One. He's like, "Ooh, this is nice." And they're meeting the president. And he goes, nice to meet you." Like, he's the one always doing what's right. Like, he's the moral core of this movie. But even though he has his arc of rediscovering his faith too, like, he has to realize that he has to rediscover his faith, and he sits down with the kids and, okay, let's pray. Like, he takes an opportunity to be a father to kids in the midst of a crisis, and to bring hope and peace in the midst of the battle. And so I just think the movie does a great job with each one of those main characters, bringing them through an arc where they step up and they realize who they really are and what's important and their purpose, and they grow. And that just shows us that that's why these crises happen in our life, even though nobody likes it. Nobody likes the crisis. Like, you're not going to like it. I'm sorry. In no way am I suggesting that you should like when bad things happen. Just saying, but God can redeem it all. And if you believe, and if you can see the end from the beginning, and the power of God, see the opportunities within these things to do good like they do.
Going back to the 1 Corinthians 11:19, there must be factions, divisions, and we could say conflict and crisis, so that those who are genuine, so the parts of me that are true, the parts of me that are genuine, may be recognized, may be revealed. And you know what? Sometimes I need to know who I am. And we've said this a few times. I was a great parent. I knew exactly what I do as a dad until my kids were here. I knew how to handle teenagers until my kids became teenagers. I know what I do as a husband until we've been married we just celebrated our 12th anniversary. Things are different now than they were 12 years ago.
Yep.
And that's honestly a really good thing, because
it is.
I was and continue to be a mess. But this idea that, wait, here's what I think, here's what I believe, and now crisis and conflict allow me to put that into action to see, is this true? And we see that with Steve. He's a fighter pilot, but he believes he's an astronaut, right? He wants to be that's the letter he gets from NASA, right? Rejecting him. But he's the only one that survives this first dogfight with the aliens. He somehow takes the spaceship down, and he crashes. But his response really showed who he was, because even after his best friend just died, even after his plane just landed on a cliffside and he's coming out of his ejector seat. I wanted to say booster seat, but that wasn't right. His reaction, one, I just love it. It's one of the funnier parts of the movie, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. Yeah. But it also reveals who he is.
That's right! That's right! Get up! Get up! That's what you get! Look at you! Ship all banged up! Who's the man? Huh? Who's the man? Wait till I get another plane! I'm lining all your friends up right beside you! Where you at, huh? Huh? Where you at? Welcome to Earth. That's what I call a close encounter. You know, this was supposed to be my weekend off. But no. You got me out here dragging your heavy ass through the burning desert with your dreadlocks sticking out the back of my parachute. You gotta come down here with an attitude, acting all big and bad. And what the hell is that smell? I could have been at a barbecue. But I ain't mad. It's all right. That is all right.
I love that. I could have been at a barbecue. And again, we start talking about our response to crisis and conflict. The funny thing is, so apparently in the desert where they were shooting that scene where he's walking across dragging the alien, there's some sort of like crustaceans that die. And then like the dust gets churned over. And then there's this horrible smell of dying crustaceans. Nobody told Will this. So that was an improvised line that he's just like, what the hell's going on? And that's such an awesome scene. But it, again, as we sort of transition to our final point, we've talked about crisis revealing who matters most, what matters most, and thereby revealing who we are. And so the question comes is almost like an action item is how are we going to respond to crisis?
Yeah. So a couple things. Number one, I can't believe they killed Harry Connick Jr. He's like only one of my favorites singers and artists.
It had to be you.
I love the word genuine. And I know you talked about it. Just to kind of dig just for a second on it. The Bible says that we have this treasure in earthen vessels. That being born again, we have this treasure within us. That God has put a treasure within us. It's inside of us. And the whole transition from Saul to David was that God doesn't look on the outside. It's about the heart. And David had a different heart. And that's the symbol of God saying, okay, that's where I'm going to bring the Messiah through, is that the line of a different heart, different nature. And so I just love that this the treasure within us that God wants to reveal. God wants to reveal that treasure. Like he believes there's a treasure within you. He believes because he knows he put it there. So he knows it's in there and he's trying to reveal it. And, championship coaches do the same thing. Potential doesn't win a championship, but it's when you practice like a champion, right? You put these young men or young women through things that are very difficult to build up their muscles and to build up who they are and to get them skills. Like then to pull them together and unify them. And there's all these sort of things. And then when they finally get to that point, then they're prepared but you have to believe that it's such a positive thing, right? Like I wouldn't put you through this. Like if the coach didn't believe you could be champions, then he would just be like, well, just show up, we'll play and I'll get my paycheck. But God's the same way. He's like, no, I believe that there's something so amazing within you. I'm going to put you through hard things. And what's going to be revealed, right? Rejoice when you come under various trials and temptations. For what's revealed is character. What's going to be built up within us is faith and character and hope. And so, yeah, just as we get to our final point, that's why God does it. And I don't always like it. I have to admit, I get mad, but I have to remind myself, like, this is part of it. And he's got something within it that I just got to figure it out and listen to him and ask,
It comes down, like we said, crisis reveals who we are, but who we are is made by our decisions. So now we're jumping to the end of the movie and we see Steve volunteer to fly the spaceship up. We see David realize that he can code to basically, Nedry to go Jurassic Park, put a virus into the aliens.
It's a War of the Worlds. That's what they do in War of the Worlds, is that the aliens got the common cold, and that's how we beat them. And he says, we're going to give them a cold. That's their callback to War of the Worlds. Like I'm saying, like this movie knows what it's stealing from, and it's admitting it's stealing from these movies.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I didn't catch that in the Amazon trivia. So David realizes he's really smart. He's not just a cable repair guy. Steve's not just a pilot. He can go do this. And really, they're the only guys that can at this moment. And so they go up there. They fly the spaceship in. They're going to download. They actually download the virus that takes down the shields. Then their plan is to pop a nuke and get out of there. but they run into a problem because their landing ship, their spaceship they flew up there to the mothership won't undock. It's connected. They can't get out. So they're stuck. And for those of you, if you were like, wait, you skipped the president's speech, we're actually going to do a separate thing on YouTube where Britt and I are going to play that clip. And then what he and I are going to do is read the actual poem and then riff on that and how that helps our response. So a little bonus feature for YouTube listeners to get you over to that content and, do us a favor, subscribe to the channel. So I want to play this clip, and it's so much better visually, but we can't do that, copyright and stuff. But they're sitting there. Steve and David are sitting there hiding behind the seats. They're about to light up the cigars because that's what you do at the end of the mission. And they have this moment where they realize this is the end. And I think they go out as the men that they are, as the warriors that they are, because of the choices that they've made.
Wow, it's funny. I always thought that things like these would kill me. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Steve, you too.
There's only one thing left to do.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
Hey, all right. Look at us. Take a look at the Earthlings. Goodbye.
I'll take care, all right? Nothing but love for you. Nothing but love for you. You think they have any clue what's about to happen to him?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.
Peace!
We're loose. Can you get us out of here in 30 seconds?
I ain't heard no fat lady!
Forget the fat lady. You're obsessed with the fat lady. Drive us out of here.
Did I play that whole clip just so I could hear, forget the fat lady? You're obsessed with the fat lady. Maybe I did. But what I wrote down, and the towards the end of the movie, after they get out of there, obviously, crash land, and they're walking back, smoking their cigars. And this is what I wrote down, which tags on what you had just said, Britt. We want the swagger, but we avoid the hero stuff. Like the series of events that put them in position, choosing, even going back, remember stole the helicopter, or Steve stole the helicopter to go check El Toro to see, and he found his wife, and he found the first lady and all these people. The hard stuff, like both Steve and the president lost their wives, at least for a brief period of time, thought they were dead. They choose to go up into this unknown spaceship out of control. And at that moment, they think they're going to die. They think they're going to blow up in 30 seconds. And the fact that it released their ship at that moment was a miracle. But they were prepared, and they were going out not as sort of cowering, woe is me, but he's like, good night. Hey, look at the Earthlings. They were going out as the warriors that they were. But we want, like I said, we want the swagger, but we don't want the hero stuff because, like you had mentioned, it's hard. The fire is hard. The divisions and the conflict and the crisis is hard to go through.
Not only is it difficult, but we don't know the ending in a sense. One of the gifts of the gospel is that we do know the ending. We do know the ultimate end, but there's no guarantee that in our individual crises moments that things will work out the way we want them to. People may not respond the way we want them to. I'm sure even though Jesus knew Judas was going to betray him, I don't think he liked it. I think he still gave him a chance, and maybe there was a chance. I believe it's total midrash, my own hypothesis. I think Judas had a chance for redemption even afterwards. Peter denied him 3 times. I mean, he had a chance for redemption.
We don't know.
But we don't know. But my point is that as bad as it looks, that we do know the ultimate end, but there's a risk. We're risking a lot, but I think it's a greater risk to not take the opportunity. Here's if you do nothing, here's what is this going to stink, right? But if you try to do something good, you at least know that you are trying to help somebody and that you are revealing what is real and what is genuine about you, which is that I'm not going to be on the side that does whatever, that tries to hurt people. I'm not going to, because as a historian, I say this all the time. As a historian, I look back at history and moments like with racism and civil rights, and I want to say I wouldn't be one of those white guys that threw rocks or did stuff with the water hoses. Like, I want to say I wouldn't be that guy. I want to say I would be one of the white guys that marched with Martin Luther King Jr. Right? I mean, I would have been a freedom rider. I would have, but I don't know. There's no way I can know, but I can look at that and think, well, right now, with all the stuff that's happening right now in our world, with all sorts of, issues happening, what kind of person am I going to be right now, knowing that you're part of history? Like in the future, you're going to be able to say, it didn't all work out like I wanted it to, but I wasn't going to be the type of person that contributed to the hurt and pain. I wasn't going to be that guy. I was going to be someone who fought even to my own sacrifice and detriment. I was going to fight for the good of others. And that's what they all end up doing. Like, everybody on the list, that's what they ended up doing. They end up fighting for something. Even the president gets in an airplane, and the guy's like, "Come on, you're the president, sir." He like a gravelly voice general guy. Yeah. And no, I'm a warrior today. Like, they need me up there more than, and so they each put their lives on the line for something bigger than themselves. And whatever that means for us in our individual context, but those are the choices that we have. And I like it. I mean, I like that it shows that. I like that the movie shows that.
Because even if you look back at David, who understood that it's a countdown clock for an invasion, and he called his ex-wife, and she hung up on him. And that could have been it. And I think for a lot of us, it is. We're like, well, I guess that's not the path. But he knew that he had to get his message. He knew that he had to save her. He's like, you need to get out of DC. I don't even think he cared really about the president. He just wanted her to get out of DC.
Yeah.
But then you think about it, like him interacting, him and his dad getting to DC, getting his message across, saving the people in that helicopter. Like, if those steps hadn't happened, they're not in position to save the world at the end. And I can't remember the verse, but all I remember, the only piece I remember is that through Jesus is through the one, many lives have been saved. Mm. And you see that, and through his sacrifices and their willingness to sacrifice. Like, they were ready. One thing left to do. We're going to blow this thing up. And you see that in Russell. He looks at his kids. It doesn't matter that his missile's not going to fire. He's going to save his kids. And he makes a decision. And his kids go from being embarrassed and calling his dad an idiot to being proud of their father at the end, because of the sacrifice and the man that he revealed himself to be. And that's what crisis does. It reveals who we are by the choices we make, by what matters and who matters to us.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes, and everybody's probably heard it, is from Mr. Rogers, who is a personal hero of mine. And Mr. Rogers said, "When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. And we saw that on 9/11. We see that in so many experiences. We're seeing that with Ukraine right now. I'm not going to go into details, but our church is literally giving money to somebody he's a missionary in the Czech Republic, and he is getting resources to people on the front line of food and other resources that people need. And because he has friends in the Ukraine, right? And so we're connected, and that's who I want to be. I want to be the guy that said, no, I tried to help. I tried to do something good. It may not work, but I don't want to be the one that said I did nothing, right? When I could have done something. And I think God blesses that with who we are eternally. We receive reward in heaven. And a lot of times we see reward here on earth too, in the redemption of people. So.
All right. So this has been Paul McDonald and Britt Mooney wrapping up our 4th of July weekend podcast, Independence Day, launching the new logo, really promoting the YouTube channel. Britt saluting me like a drunk Randy Quaid.
I'm not drinking yet. It's still early.
I didn't say you were drunk.
Oh.
And again, the whole point is, when you face a crisis, who's most important? Do they know it? Who are you? Who is it you want to be? And then fight to become that man, fight to become that person, because your wife needs it. Your kids need it. The world needs it.
Yeah.
So, and if you want to hear Britt and I talk about do not go gentle into that good night, jump over to our YouTube channel, Men at the Movies, and we're going to talk about that poem and break it down. And happy 4th of July. Stay safe with the fireworks and the hot dogs. May neither one of them explode in your immediate vicinity. And I hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?